All right. Happy New Year. I want to welcome everybody to a brand new episode of the Shadows podcast. Today, I have Batista here with me. Batista, how's everything going with you in Vegas?
It's good. Today, I was supposed to drop my son off at the CDC, the Child Development Center, but it was closed and I didn't know. So I'm here, not shaved, wearing a hoodie and a hat, but I'm just happy to be here. I know we had to reschedule a couple of times for this episode, but we're here. So I know I had to be here. I told you I have to be here for this episode. So whatever we have to do. So we made it happen. We adapted, overcame, had to make breakfast at the last minute, go to the park for 30 minutes. I was like, hey, Zeke, we got to go. So at least I'm here.
You'll make it up to him after. That's what I'm doing. We've had a busy couple of days because we're about to hit the road tomorrow and go visit some family, social distancing with family. And my wife, I pretty much made a promise to her that when I'm done with everything today and I close my laptop, it stays shut until we get back. And we're going to, it's going to get a little heated. We're going to have some Monopoly after this with the family. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
So basically you're telling me you're going to text me at 11 o'clock tonight instead of earlier.
Yeah. But it's funny though, because my daughter, she's 12 and she just stomped a mud hole in my wife and I on Monopoly the other night. And I told her, I said, fine, and I'm a bad loser sometimes. So I'm like, we're going to have a rematch this afternoon. And she's like, yeah, like I'm scared. So yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for it now. So today we have really looked forward to this one. We circled this one on our calendar of episodes. Like you heard Batista say, he's like, I had to be here for this one. And we had to get this one ready. We feel like it's going to drop at an appropriate time right after the new year. Mm-hmm. And today we have Kristen Christy, who I feel very comfortable now saying that I have made a great friendship with her here over the past month. We've been connecting people with one another. She's a remarkable person. I first heard her speak at Gunter around this time last year, I believe it was. And she came in and talked. And I told her, I said, I got the email saying she was going to be speaking. I didn't know a whole lot about her story at the time. And I said, I'll go check this out. Next thing I know, I've got the commander next to me. I got another instructor next to me. Everybody on the rows in tears. It was a very emotional, very powerful speech that she gave up there. And I was instantly drawn to her, listening to her speak, and finally reached out to her this year. And we made an amazing connection, which I'm very glad we were able to do. She is the 2018 Air Force Spouse of the Year. She's a proud mother, wife. Fox News called her remarkably resilient. And she's a firm believer of turning adversity into opportunity. And she is, when I think of what we're trying to do here on Shadows Podcast, this is like the poster person for what we're trying to accomplish with our listeners out there. So, ma'am, welcome to the Shadows Podcast.
Thank you.
That was a good reenactment of the logo there. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I am doing fantastic. Happy New Year. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I love when I get phone calls like yours, Bodie, that it just reinforces that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, telling our story and hopefully bringing hope to people. We don't always feel that. Even being known as a resilience expert, 2020 has been hard. I think it's you can have all the tools in the toolbox, and there's still some stumbling blocks. That's for sure. But I'm tickled pink to start off this new year with you. So
it's first one that we're doing. So Batista, I'm gonna let you get started with the rapid fire questions for her.
Nice. And before I get started, that's exactly why I wanted to be here. Kristen, was because of your resiliency on everything that you've went through in life. I personally have lost 4 friends from personal struggles that they've had. So I just want to give a shout out to someone out there. His name's Joey Ben Nadi, the best firefighting captain I've ever had. I miss him every day. I think it's been 3 years this December since he's been away from us. So I definitely want to give a shout out to him. I know a lot of my listeners that are listening They definitely appreciate that shout out. And also a shout out to my son. I know we talked off there. He turns 3 tomorrow. He's a New Year's baby. So, and I've mentioned you guys, 7th born baby in Tucson. So, but yeah, here's your first rapid fire question. Same question I asked Shay Sparks. What is your spirit animal and why?
Oh, my spirit animal is the hummingbird. To me, a hummingbird represents joy and energy and passion and beauty, gracefulness. In fact, I just got a new logo and I have a hummingbird on it. It to me, and my husband loves to feed the hummingbirds here in Colorado. We have like 7 hummingbird feeders, and just to watch them, it's a graceful choreography, but it looks graceful, but it can get messy sometimes. If you've ever fed hummingbirds, not all of the sugar water goes into their little bodies. You know, there can be left a mess, but still it's the beauty and the passion and the joy and the energy that they bring.
Ma'am, you're brave, you're courageous. You have tackled something that a lot of people are afraid of, and that's public speaking. You get up in front of stages at, base after base, engagement after engagement. You talk to people, but what is something that you're afraid to try?
Skydiving. It is one of them. There are a number of things that I'm fearful of, and I talk about fear in my presentation, right? And my new logo, the tagline is "Live more, fear less." It's not about being fearless. I think for me anyway, that's not obtainable. There's going to be some fear, and I'm trying to get over those fears. Yeah, public speaking is not fearful. I get energy from it. I'm on a high, a legal high. I will say a legal high. I do have a clearance, and I live in Colorado, but a legal high from it. But sometimes it's a fear of getting outside my comfort zone. Being comfortable is comfortable, but we don't stretch as human beings, and our passions aren't necessarily fueled unless we make that comfort zone our escape room. So for 2021, one of my goals is to escape from my comfort zone and step out there a little bit more. More importantly, I don't do it by myself. I always have a wingman, a battle buddy, my husband, a friend, whatever that is, because we see in each other potential that we don't necessarily see in the mirror. So.
Nice. I like that. Conquer fears, not only by yourself, with others. But so when you're ready to conquer that skydiving fear, let's do it in Las Vegas together. I know we were talking about connecting when you're here.
Yeah.
Okay. What year would you visit if you had a time machine, and why?
Oh man. So in my mind, and I don't really know why, but 1956, that just was the number that popped up. I'm trying to think what happened in 1956. I'm not a big history buff or anything like that, but one of my idols is Audrey Hepburn, Grace Kelly, that old Hollywood kind of glamour. And what's interesting is when I think of those two specifically, and Lucille Ball. So my grandfather dated Lucille Ball in high school. They both lived in Jamestown, New York. And so I know some backstories, but their life was glamorous in front of the camera. They didn't have social media back then. They didn't any of that stuff. but they were real people. And they went through elementary school and middle school and high school just like the rest of us do. They had ups and downs, but they were glamorous. Why can't we be glamorous in our own way, right?
Nice.
So 1956, that's my answer, and I'm sticking to it.
So in 1956, Elvis Presley first hit Heartbreak Hotel, if you didn't know.
Okay.
Rocky Marciano, the boxer, retired. And then the US had its first computer hard drive.
Gas was 22 cents as well.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Wow. So my mom was Priscilla Presley's social studies teacher in Wiesbaden, Germany. She was my mom was a DoD high school teacher, and she had a chance to meet Elvis when he came to visit Priscilla in Wiesbaden. So yeah, thank you very much. Well, you're in Vegas. You get that all the time, don't you?
Yeah, we really do. Nice. Bodhi has the last one, right?
I do.
Okay.
What's the most recent book that you've read, and how would you describe it with one word?
Oh, interesting question, Bodhi, because just the last 2 weeks, I have taken on the challenge of reading one book a week. The book I'm reading right now is Limitless by Jim Quick, to help with memory and speed reading and speed comprehension, not just skimming. I read Simon Sinek's Start With Why last week, and I read The Power of Now the week before that. All of those have, I would say, transformational for all 3 of those books. The same word. And that's what the books that I read this year, I want them to be transformational, to make me into a better Kristen Christy.
Yeah.
Because there are other people with my name, but I am the only Kristen Christy.
There you go.
And I want to make this person the best that I can be to help other people be the best they can be. Because we're all unique, like everyone else.
That is true. That is very true. So thank you. You survived our rapid fire questions.
All right.
So now what we're going to do is we're going to get into your story. So if you could, for our listeners, just paint a picture as to your childhood. Where were you born? What did your parents do? Where did you grow up?
I am so fortunate to be a product of the Air Force. I was born in Syracuse, New York, when my dad was attending Syracuse University through the AFIT program to get his master's degree. I was born 3 months before he went to Vietnam. He was an intel officer. And so I will say I'm 53 years old. So I don't want, as I'm telling our story and all that, I don't want people to have to think about how old I am. Or I'll say 39 plus shipping and handling, expedited shipping and handling, if you will. But so from 3 months to 18 months, it was just me and my mom. And we moved from New York to Tennessee to live near my grandparents, which back then was pretty normal for spouses and families to move back to their family, to have that sense of community and that family to help support them during the Vietnam War. But my dad came back and we started our moves. We moved to Italy and then to Germany. And my younger brother was born at Rhine-Main when we were stationed there. Went back to Brindisi, Italy, and then to San Antonio. San Antonio, we typically moved every 2 years with my dad's command. He was with Electronic Security Command, which was security service before that. But their thought was, get your job done in 2 years. If you can't, then let someone else come in. If you can, then let's move you to somewhere else where you can get it done in 2 years. So about every 24 months, my brother had a tough time with the moves. He was an introvert. I was an extrovert. I'm an uber extrovert. I can suck the air right out of an introvert's lungs, even over Zoom. I've got to be careful and temper that. But it was interesting. We were at Air War College at Maxwell. I was in 6th grade. My brother was in 4th grade. And my dad's seminar, they did the Myers-Briggs test. And they had us do the Myers-Briggs test, which now I understand it really shouldn't be done until someone's 18 or older. But we did the Myers-Briggs test, and I still remember we opened up the information, and my brother was like, "I am not," and we're like, "What's upsetting you so much?" He said, "It says I am an introvert." And how many times have we heard introvert and we think of it as a negative? And it's not. An extrovert isn't a positive or a negative. An introvert isn't. My mom had a great definition of it. She said an introvert converts their energy from within. An extrovert converts their energy from external sources. It's just how we're wired. It's not a positive or a negative. Yeah, after Maxwell, we went to, where did we go after that? We went to Okinawa, Japan, which was wonderful. I will tell you, I have not met a single Marine who has never been to Okinawa. We loved our 2 years in Okinawa, and then to Omaha at Offutt Air Force Base, and then to Wiesbaden, Germany. And that's where I graduated from high school. I graduated from H.H. Arnold High School, the same high school where my mom, when she was single, had taught 20 years before. And a lot of my teachers had taught with my mom. It was neat to come and have this reconnecting with this community. My dad was stationed in Italy when my mom was in Germany, and he went up and was on leave in Wiesbaden and met my mom. And 6 months later, they met in Basel, Switzerland, and got married at the Justice of the Peace on a Tuesday, because that's when they did English-speaking weddings. But I mean, my life has been Air Force through and through. I had plans, as we all do, right? Right now, we have plans for our lives. We have plans for 2021, but I've learned that there are detours, and it's okay when we can take those detours together. But when you were talking about Monopoly, Bodie, I could feel the competitiveness in you, which is fantastic. I'm very competitive. My family, we had 2 mantras growing up. One was, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. If you ask, you have a chance. If you have a chance, take it. If it changes your life or someone else's life, let it. And the other one was, get embedded in your community, wherever you are and whatever that community looks like. It could be your neighborhood. It could be your office. It could be your kid's school, the other parents. It could be your Texas Hold'em group or your Monopoly group that you meet with. But it was so important to get embedded in our community. But I asked, when I was younger, could I get involved in sports? And my parents said, absolutely. And my parents believed that tennis and golf were great lifetime sports. Football, how many football players do you know retire at the age of 27? That it's a tough sport. But golf and tennis were something all 4 of us could play. And so we got involved in that, and then also swimming. So I was a 3-sport athlete, and I was blessed enough to have people come into our path, moving every 24 months. I had a new coach. My parents tried to coach me, but come on. Do we let our parents teach us anything? No. So I was blessed to have coaches, and in high school, my hard work was paying off. So my junior year in high school, we had just moved to Wiesbaden. My schedule was, I would get up at 4:00 in the morning, go to tennis practice, go to my junior year in high school, and then go to golf practice because it was golf season. It was off season for tennis. But in October of 1983, I had the opportunity to play a 14-year-old who was 98th in the world at the time. She went on to be the #1 women's tennis player for 7 straight years. They've asked that I not use her name, her PR people and all that. But I beat her. And I was riding high because my plan was I already had scholarships for golf and tennis. I had given up swimming. I had gone to the Junior Olympics in Tokyo, Japan for swimming. I knew that I needed to drop something to find that harmony, right? Back then it was balance, but now it's the harmony, the ups and downs. And so I was riding high on that. The next week I won the golf championship in Germany for all the DoD high schools, and I beat the #1 boy. I mean, my hard work was paying off, right? Competitive and athlete. I was a good student. I was a good person. And my plan was after college, either to choose between tennis or golf scholarships. But after college, I really, truly wanted to go on the pro tennis circuit. That was really what I wanted to do. But then 2 weeks after I won the golf championship, I had a major detour. So I had been having headaches for 2 months since we moved to Germany and had gone to the pediatrician, and they said it was my rigorous schedule. I mean, most people would have a headache working a schedule like that. But it was something that I was driven. I still am, just in a different realm. But I had a massive stroke. I was having headaches because I had a brain bleed. I was born with a malformed vein that burst. It was 6 days after the Beirut bombing of the Marine Corps barracks in 1983. It was 9 days before my 16th birthday. They take me to Landstuhl in Germany, the Army hospital. That's the neurosurgical hospital. They couldn't do surgery on me because they had the Marines. So this is where our community comes together. We were in Germany for 2 months, but we had people that my mom had worked with 20 years before, and she kept in touch with them. She fostered that relationship. Our chaplain from when we lived in San Antonio, my dad was a commander of one of the basic training squadrons. The chaplain there moved to Wiesbaden, and good friends of ours. We had all these people in our community that came alongside. Aerovac me to Wolford Hall in San Antonio because my Sunday school teacher graduated from the Air Force Academy. His roommate at the academy was the #1 neurosurgeon in Wolford Hall. Had surgery. It took me, the prognosis was if I lived, I would never walk again. I mean, it was that bad. The right side of my face looked like a melted candle. I was right-handed. I don't take no for an answer. I think that's part of the competitiveness and the drive. And so when they told me no, and I tell you, our kids are really good at it. Batista, I mean, your son turns 3, but I'm sure he doesn't take no for an answer, right? If you tell him no on something, he'll go to mom. Our kids are really good at finding no stands for next opportunity. Next opportunity. Our kids are really good at finding that next opportunity. It took me a year and a half to learn to walk again. I write with my left hand now, not my right. I don't have very good fine motor movement with my right. So Bodhi, hopefully when you saw me speak last year up on stage, you didn't really notice much of any limitations. But I can do this, but this is a little harder. It's the fine motor movement. I did get a scholarship to college because I was handicapped. I went to the University of Texas in Austin because my dad was a Texas resident. And I had to find my community. I had lived on military installations my entire life. 53,000 students at the University of Texas in Austin, largest university population-wise in 1985 when I was a freshman. My community was the ROTC building. I understood the language. I was not able to raise my right hand to take the oath of service, so I raised my left hand to volunteer. Pick me, pick me. I hung out at the ROTC building. Those were my people. And college was difficult for me. You know, I felt like I had lost my identity because my identity was based on being an athlete. How many times have you lost your identity in what you thought were your identities and something was taken away, right? We have that. I put my identity on what I did, not who I was. Competitive, hard worker, self-charging, hard charging, self-starter, character, right? Character, part of my character. Character is really the identity. And I had to find new avenues for those talents. I did get depressed. My body did not work. It did not do what I wanted of it. But that detour, I did not take that detour alone. My community came alongside. And college was difficult for me. Even I was a good student in high school. College was a different story. I volunteered for parties. I will tell you that. Don't tell my parents, but it was kind of a new lease on life and trying to find my way. But hanging out at the RTC building was good for me. And that's where I met Christy. He was the only person in a room I didn't know. And I made a beeline right to him. Remember, I'm an uber extrovert. So it bothers me when there's someone that I don't know. And I said, hi, I'm Kristen Anderson. He said, hi, I'm Christy. We can never get married. I looked at him kind of confused. I'm thinking, what kind of pickup line is that? You know, what does he mean by that? And then he said, you would be Kristen Christy. I told you I don't take no for an answer, right? Woo, 5 months later. He was an Air Force ROTC. You know, it truly was the only way of life I knew. Air Force blue through and through. Now, granted, we lived on joint military bases. So I was, purple, if you will. Great way of life. Loved it. And then to be married into it and to change my ID card from a dependent daughter, first child, to a spouse. I really looked forward to all of that. And he was a missileer. We went to Grand Forks, North Dakota from Austin, Texas. That was a big change. And we started raising our family. We had our first son, Ryan, there. And then after 4 years there, and we got embedded in our community because, as you know, TDY gremlins come out, or when he's pulling alert, you know, your spouses can attest to all that, I'm sure. Crazy stuff happens when our military members are gone. And we really rely on the community. But after 4 years, we got an assignment to Colorado Springs, where I'm living now, and got embedded in our community. We bought a house. So first time I hadn't lived on an installation, which was pretty neat. Our community was a little bit different. A lot of civilians who didn't necessarily understand the military way of life. And then we found a new community with the Air Force Reserve. Don came home one day and he said, you know, I've always wanted to, my goal has been to be a squadron commander and a lieutenant colonel, and my active duty career is not going in that, down that lane. And he said, I think I'm going to separate from the Air Force. And I'm like, wait a minute, I've had an ID card since I was 10 years old. You're going to take that away? That's part of my identity. Remember that misplaced identity? And that's when we found out about the Air Force Reserve, and it was the best of both worlds for us. It truly was. And at that time in 1997, we could homestead. a reservist could pretty much homestead. And Colorado Springs is a great place to homestead. You've got the Air Force Academy, you've got Schriever, which was Falcon Air Station when we moved here, and Peterson, and Cheyenne Mountain Air Station. So there were a lot of opportunities here. But he was a traditional reservist for a while, and then the 310th Space Wing stood up. It was a group at that time, but it was the only space group in the reserve. And Don was a space operator. He was a Missileer and then a satellite operator after that when we came here. So the opportunity, he asked. If you don't ask, the answer is no. He asked if he could be a part of the 310th, and he was on the ground floor of the 310th Space Wing and became a squadron commander and a lieutenant colonel. The things that he really was looking for in his military career. When he was commander of 19 SOPs, it was the largest squadron in Air Force Reserve Command. He came home one day and said, I've been tasked with getting volunteers for a deployment to Baghdad. And I don't feel right asking for volunteers unless my name is at the top of the list. That's a leader, guys.
That's a leader.
Right? That is a leader. A manager, a supervisor says go, a leader says let's go. And his name was at the top of the list. He didn't say, hey, I need volunteers, and then his name was, on there somewhere. If they didn't have I was so proud of him that day when he told me about that. He was the only one chosen. He went to Baghdad. He was second in command of the Baghdad airport at Camp Sather. He was gone for 4.5 months. We had 2 children, Ryan, our oldest, and Ben, our youngest. The boys and I did not watch TV. We did not watch the news. This was in 2004. We didn't have Skype. We didn't have, the social media like it is now. We would email him at night before the boys went to bed, and then in the morning we typically had an email from him. We heard about all the cool stuff that went on. Toby Keith taking a nap on his couch when he came through for a USO tour. Ted Nugent signing his gun holster. Meeting the Secretary of the Air Force, meeting the SecDef on the tarmac, all this, really cool stuff. He came back different. We heard a lot, right? Came back different. What the sparkle in his eyes that drew me to him across that room when he was the only person in the room I didn't know was gone. His fingernails were bitten down to the nub. He was an introvert, but even more introverted, more reserved than usual. I used to joke with him about he picked up the habit of aromatherapy in Baghdad, smoking cigars. That was his aromatherapy. It was hard to reintegrate. And 4.5 months does not sound like a whole lot of time right now, does it? But back then, when you're separated from your family and in a war zone and all that, just not knowing. I wish that we could have had Zoom or something so I could see what his office looked like and see there's that missing part. I've always wanted to go back or go to Iraq. And so I am asking, one day I will get there just to experience a little bit about what he did. And I really, as spouses, and I'm talking generally here, but as spouses, it helps us to understand the environment that you're in when you're TY or deployed or, pulling alerts. It helped us so much when we were in Grand Forks. We had a family day down in the silo. So we got to see where he was spending his 24 hours when he was pulling alert. And that really helped quite a bit. But we communicated because I knew something was wrong. We did communicate. And there were things that he couldn't talk about. And it wasn't clearance related. It was just things he couldn't talk about, he couldn't express, or he didn't want to. And there were things that I didn't want to talk to him about that went on at home because I didn't want to burden him with them. And so we came up with, we said, okay, there's sacred spaces. He has his sacred spaces. I had my sacred spaces, and we went on. And he had the opportunity to attend Army War College in Carlisle, Barracks. And we had debated, should he geo-batch it? And we stayed there. We built a custom home in Colorado Springs, because remember, we could homestead. We were planning on homesteading. And we decided for our family, for the boys, for our marriage, that we would sell our house, go to Carlisle, and we were told we would go to the Pentagon afterwards. So his career was really taking off. And I admit I enjoyed all of that. I missed moving because that's part of my DNA and the way I'm wired, because that's my frame of reference growing up. New chapters, new friends, new adventures, new challenges to overcome. But so we opted to do that, and I really thought it was going to be saving grace, because remember, my dad we went to Air War College at Maxwell, and it was a great year for our family. Terrific year for oh man, I hope, Bodie, that you all get a chance to experience all that. I know you aren't there as a student, you're there as an instructor, but I think Maxwell and Gunter, they have a great community and to get embedded as a family in. And I thought that going to Carlisle was going to be kind of the same thing. And it was, to an extent, but there was still something off. And I just couldn't put my finger on it. And I didn't ruminate over it, or any, time will heal. I really didn't have to do much about it. We still communicated and things like that. And he really reintegrated with the boys more. But our marriage, we were having a tough time. And then the Air Force changed its mind. I know, it's hard to believe. And instead of going to the Pentagon, they needed us back in Colorado Springs. That was a tough move. Not because we weren't excited about coming back to our friends. So we had moved here in 95, and we had moved to Carlisle in 2005. So we had been here for 10 years. We had established roots. It wasn't that we weren't excited about coming back, but our community life as we knew it here in Colorado Springs had gone on without us, which is fine, but trying to get back into it was really difficult. I actually asked if we could buy our house back. Remember that custom home we built? I rang the doorbell. If you don't ask, the answer is no.
It's like Father of the Bride.
Answer was no. The answer was no. So next opportunity was buying another house, getting embedded in a new community and all. But things were hard. Things got really, really hard. And 2 years after we moved back, the doorbell rang, and it was the coroner and 2 officers. Don was 3 days from hitting on Colonel, and he had taken his life. Our boys were 14 and 12. I talk about the word catatonic. You know, we hear that word, but I saw that. I saw the definition in my kids' eyes when I had to tell them. I remember all I could say was my poor kids. You know, I'm an adult. Don and I were having a rough time of it, and but our kids. And he left 7 notes. Didn't answer our questions. We still have unanswered questions. The guilt that I felt I made one phone call that night, and our neighbors came over to the house, and then all of a sudden more people started coming, which I so appreciated. Not necessarily then at that moment, but the fact that they got outside their comfort zone to say, you know what, we're going to stand in the gap of their broken heart and stand with them and show up. And they showed up. I remember every single person standing in our living room. This was 12 years ago, 13 years next, in April. I remember every single person, and they didn't necessarily say anything to us. They were just there. They were there. And I welcome that. And I look back at that, and they showed up. That's one of the things I talked about is when life is not going the way we want it to. So life is a 4-letter word, right? 4-letter, L-I-F-E. It can be a 4-letter word like the F word or the F word or, whatever that I'm not going to say out loud. You know what I mean? Or it can be a 4-letter word like love and play and golf. Think of a 4-letter word that you enjoy, that brings joy, right? Life is not always easy, but it's better when we're together. And our community came alongside and helped us. We had to move. We got the life insurance, but then my in-laws were suing me for it. And so we didn't get the life insurance. I went from a stay-at-home mom of 15 years to needing to find a job, not having retirement, just all these things, anomalies that typically don't happen. But it's funny because anomalies don't typically happen. What typical anomaly do we have in life? Our community came alongside and helped, and I got a job as a receptionist. I was trying to take care of my boys. Both of them attempted suicide. Which I didn't, and I still have questions about, because if they knew how difficult it was for us as a family to go through that when their dad did, how they could think about doing that again. But in that moment, you don't think about anyone else. You can't remove that veil to think of your family and what it's going to leave behind. If you could think about the future, there are good things in the future. There are good things. Whether life is throwing tomatoes at you right now, there are good things coming. And it's better when you're around. So Ben was 12 years old when his dad died. 8 years later, on his 20th birthday, he was at the University of Arizona in Tucson. I woke up the morning of his 20th birthday, and I had a voicemail. My phone was off. I don't think any parent, not even a parent, I don't think any human being wants to hear something like that. And you all have that voicemail, so you can edit this out and play that voicemail. Ben attempted suicide that night. His community, his fraternity brothers, his roommate came alongside of him. He was in Tucson, I was in Colorado. They got him the help that he needed. is on a 72-hour hold. I mean, it's hard being so far away, but that voicemail is still hard to hear all these years later. But it's a reminder of the aftermath of what's left behind, the choices that we make. We have choices every single day. And it's how do we decide on the choices that we make? And what are those choices going to do to those left behind? Or those in our sphere of influence, right? I'm not only talking about suicide, right? We know that that's a choice that Don made, and the rippling effect. But just the choice that you make today, you're going to have a choice to make. You know, Batista, you went to the park. That was a choice you made to take your son to the park this morning. That was a great, your son benefited from the choice that you made, right? It's hard to see outside of ourselves sometimes, and to see the potential that we have. But when we have that gut feeling or that heart feeling that something isn't right with someone else, being a noticer, I think is important. And we aren't all wired that way. But when we can come to, you know, has someone taken their family picture off their desk? Are their fingernails sitting down to the nub? How can we be a noticer and help people along the way to take some of the burden off of them? You know, I feel like I failed as a spouse and a mother. My oldest son, Ryan, was 14 when his dad died, and Ryan has been missing for 1,928 days. Over 5 years. The suicide triggered bipolar in Ryan early is what we've learned. And he was 16 when he was diagnosed and got into meth and heroin and alcohol. He was self-medicating, if you will, running away. When I get the opportunities to stand on a stage or in front of a room or in front of a TV camera or in front of a microphone or a webcam, I don't know where Ryan is, but he might be seeing this. And Ryan, I'm just going to say, I love you unconditionally. My number has not changed since 1999. I am here for you whenever you're ready. As a mom, it's tough, but that is one of the passions that fuel the soul, fuel my passion to do what I do, is to help people understand life is not easy, and it's okay. Easy is a 4-letter word, right? All these 4-letter words coming up. Hope is a 4-letter word, and it stands for hold on, pain eases. It eases, it doesn't end, and that's okay. I think because of the adversities that we've gone through in life, Bodhi, God bless you, man. You have gone through adversity. I mean, you understand. Batista, you have gone through adversities, and we can't compare. You know, Batista, on your off-air podcast that you did, you alluded a little bit to, you know, you've gone through things, you've seen things in life, right? Your call out at the beginning of this podcast. But in that podcast, you had mentioned, after knowing Bodhi's adversities in life, you know, that's episode 3 of your first season. If people need to go back and listen to it, I think it's very important. You can't compare adversities, right? We can compare pain scale. You go to the doctor, they show you the sad face to the happy face, you know, 1 through 10. What's your pain level? We've all been through a 10 out of 10 on the pain scale. I think the beauty, and yes, I'm using the word beauty in our adversities, that we come together as a community. We find out how strong we really are. For me, I found out how important my faith truly is. But we're more emotionally connected to other people. I think it gives us more empathy. I talk about, I want to be an emotional support human for other people. Not everyone, some people are allergic to dogs. They can't have an emotional support pet, or whatever. I want to be that emotional support human. But I think we have that in all of us, to where we can come alongside and help each other out. I've talked about some really big adversities in my life. I have a natural silver lining. So the silver lining in my hair is natural. That's one of the questions I get. Is this really natural, or did I put this in? Did it come from a box? They came in a year after my stroke. And it reminds me, it's God's way of saying, Kristen, there is a silver lining. There is a silver lining, and have faith. He's put people in my path that I can help, that they can help me, or more importantly, that someone in my sphere of influence can help someone in their sphere of influence. Bodhi, you've already connected me to a number of people. And I talked about Shay, right? Shay and I are like soul sisters. Where's she been all my life? But the time was not right until right now to meet her through you and through this podcast. It's all about time. Another 4-letter word. It's all about time. And I can be impatient sometimes, but we are not made to do life alone. We come together in whatever capacity that we feel comfortable with, and we stretch a little bit outside our comfort zone. We're on an emotional battlefield, especially 2020 has been an emotional battlefield for everyone. And there's no room for strangers on this battlefield. There's no room for silence. We come together and we get through it together. And we are. And that's what I think resilience is all about. Some people talk about bouncing back, and that's fine if that's their definition. And I will say my definition used to be about bouncing back. Yes, I bounced back from that adversity or bounced back from that detour. The thing with bouncing back, you're in the same spot. I don't want to be in the same spot. I want to get through it. Absolutely get through it. But you don't do it alone. The power in community. So I answered your first question.
No, that's perfect. And I was just thinking, I was like, this is going to be really tough to jump in and ask you another question, because that was just, kudos to you. Kudos to you. You said you don't like to compare because every situation is different. But I told you before we started recording, I said I see a lot of my mother and what my mother went through with the same experience as you. My mother had no life insurance when my father passed away and had to raise 2 kids. And my sister had suicidal tendencies and was dealing with depression and resorted to drugs and alcohol. But one thing I want to do here is I want to celebrate those in your life. So tell us some stuff about your husband, Don, and like, what were some things he liked to do? What were some movies he liked? What were some things that you would like the audience to know to kind of celebrate his life?
Yeah. And it's funny because Ben, our youngest son, who is 25, he is, he works as a government civilian at Edwards Air Force Base. the voicemail kid. He looks so much like his dad. And he has that twinkle in his eye and that sarcastic wit. And I can see the leader that Ben is. Ben has always been a leader growing up. Don loved the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to say it out loud. We are Dallas Cowboy fans through and through. And then the Longhorns. So our family picture, we are all, this is from Army War College. We are all in burnt orange because that was the year that Miss Young helped us win
Rose Bowl,
the national championship. Yeah. For UT. So Don was very much into sports. He loved softball. And in fact, he caught a softball with his face. He was so competitive in softball. He caught a softball in his face, broke his nose. You know, we gave him a softball with a purple heart on it. I still have the cards that he would give me for Christmas and our anniversary. And I will admit, one year for Valentine's Day, he forgot to get a card until the last minute, and there were no English cards available. So he gave me a Spanish card. And then every year for Valentine's Day after that, he gave me a Spanish card. You know, he really made some changes with the squadron and the GPS system and all that. And his effort, one of the acronyms I talk about is END, E-N-D, effort never dies. And that effort that he put into that did not die. It was interesting at his funeral, Ryan, our 14-year-old, the one who's missing, wanted to do his eulogy, and over 300 people, standing room only. And he said, you know, remember my dad for his wit, for his leadership. I mean, his children saw what a great leader he was. Don't let the way his life ended define him as a human being. And I see that in Ben, and it lives on. He lives on. We try and keep that going. That's for sure. Thank you for asking about that, Bodhi. I really appreciate that. I haven't been asked to celebrate him before, so thanks.
Absolutely, yeah. Batista.
Sorry, my son, like I said, he's here and he's definitely present. No, he's in his room next door, so
okay. All right.
He's pretty loud.
He's doing his own podcast right now.
Yeah.
Role model.
Sorry, I was also looking something up on online, but tell us more about Ryan. You mentioned he had bipolar, and then the last time you saw him was you had the exact days, but it seemed it was September 20th, 2015. Is that correct?
Yep. It was. I'll tell you, our relationship was really rocky. You know, the drugs didn't help, and I didn't know what to do. Right now, I have parents calling me about, you know, what do I do? I'm partnering with one military spouse who called me. She didn't know the whole story about Ryan, but you know, the lessons that I learned. I was afraid of Ryan. I was afraid of him leaving. I was afraid of the drug dealers. He was writing bad checks to drug dealers. They were my checkbook. He was forging my name. So they had our address, and our house was vandalized. Our car was vandalized and all. And I had a younger son to take care of. And it was really, really difficult for me. I had to call the police and file a police report on Ryan. You know, hindsight, it saved his life. We got him into the system before he was 18, before he would have to go to the county jail. And he turned his life. He got off meth himself. He got off the drugs. He started his own business. he dropped out of high school, but I convinced him to get his GRD or GED, and he got a 97% in every section of the GED. Smart kid. And it took the adversity of standing in front of a judge a number of times to be held accountable for what he did. And as a mom, it was very difficult to see that, but I stood by him. He started his own business. He did concrete countertops, and not concrete like pouring all this concrete and they're heavy, but it was artistry. He was a musician. He wrote his own music. It was, the passion he had about music, and truly music is universal. It's universal. I was kind of waiting on the hot seat for the question that you've asked before. If you could have a superpower, what would it be? And all since fourth grade, my answer was, I want to speak and understand every single language in the world. Can you imagine communicating with every single person in the world? But music was Ryan's communication, and he spoke to people globally. It was amazing. And he came to me one day and he said, Mom, I really kind of want to go off the grid for a little bit. And there's a place in Hilo, Hawaii that teaches self-sustaining farming, yoga, and meditation. And I think I want to do that. I've applied to be an apprentice there for 4 months. And I thought, I looked it up. He was looking over my shoulder as I was researching this on the internet and all, just to make sure it wasn't a cult, wasn't going to take all the money, all that stuff. And I didn't realize that self-sustaining farming meant pot, but that's okay. It was legal in Colorado. I picked him up on September 20th of 2015. He had some roommates and all. He stored our furniture in our garage. So temporary, right? He did sell his truck. He said he was just going to start anew when he got back. He was going to be back January 4th. And I picked him up. We went to the cemetery to visit his dad's headstone. And I took him to the Greyhound bus station. He had a ticket from Colorado Springs to LA. And then in LA, he was taking a flight to Hilo, Hawaii. He had it all planned out. He was very resourceful. He went to Italy one time for 3 weeks. He had a ticket there and a ticket back. No other plans. He had a great trip. Very resourceful kid. And I thought this was going to be really good for him. 2 months later, this was November of 2015, he received a letter at our house. Remember, he wasn't living at our house, but he received a letter from the IRS at our house that said he still owed taxes. And I had asked him about his tax return and all, and he said that he had paid his taxes. He did not pay his taxes. So I contacted the retreat area, and they said, we don't have a Ryan Christy here. We don't have anyone who's 22 years old. They heard this angst in my voice as I kept saying, well, he looks like this, maybe he's here in this name. I don't know. They said that there were 3 other places in the area, but I remember this was a place that he told me he had applied for. They said, we have no application for him, nothing. But they checked 3 other places. They didn't have him. And that's when I went to the bus station. His name was not on the roster. I did not know what name he would go by. I went to the police. My friend and I we've had a debate over saving the first baby tooth. Did you guys save your kid's first baby tooth at all? Or did your parents save your first baby tooth?
We might have, but I don't know. It probably got lost somewhere. I think we did, though.
Okay.
I did. My wife thought I was a weirdo.
Do.
And I also saved his first haircut. Yeah.
Yep. So we have both of the little trimmings from their hair. So the police have Ryan's first baby tooth. and pieces of his first haircut for DNA.
So you mentioned, you know, Ryan liked, he was big into music. Who were some of the artists he really liked?
So he loved the classical, the Mozart, the Beethoven. He was in the youth symphony here. I really didn't get into what he liked. I mean, as a family, we would listen to country music. You know, he loved Toby Keith. So when Toby came through Baghdad in 2004 and took a nap on Don's couch, he actually had Toby sign a piece of paper that said "Happy Birthday, Ryan," and Toby signed it, and "Happy Birthday, Ben." And then on their birthdays, Don gave it to him.
It's really cool.
But he played the saxophone, the clarinet, the piano. He sang. It was so funny how both kids come from the same gene pool, and Ben was the sportsman, 3 sports in high school, and then Ryan was the musician. It was fun to see them coming into their own, but it was exhausting as a parent.
Yeah, I bet.
Couldn't I just take you to the soccer field,
Yeah.
both of you? Right?
You said he traveled to Italy. Where were some places he liked traveling to? What was it about Italy that he liked? Did he come back and talk about the Colosseum or the Tower of Pisa?
He did. So his plan was to be in Italy for a few days, and then Spain and Switzerland. And he fell in love with Italy. So my mom, this fabulous military spouse who got her first job when she was 50 years old, started working at the National Security Agency as a GG4. Ended up, she passed away at 78. She was still working at NSA part-time as a GS-14. Such an amazing woman. On her 67th birthday, they called and said, "Would you like an assignment to Germany?" And she said, "Heck yes." And so my parents went off to Germany and for her job. And so we took the opportunity to take the boys over. Don being in space, there weren't any opportunities really to go overseas with space. And so we took the opportunity, we took the boys over, and we used my parents' house as the home base. We would come back and do our laundry and all, but we did Italy. And Don, his mom was Italian. His grandparents who lived close by were Italian. You know, there was that love, especially when we would go back to Austin to visit, and his grandma would make the fresh ricotta cheese and the red gravy and all of that. So we had taken the boys to Italy. We had done Florence and Rome and Pisa, and Ryan really wanted to go back and explore that in Spain and Switzerland, but Italy just kept him there, and he met people, did youth hostels. He didn't talk about it as much. It was kind of his respite when he was over there, but you could see his face light up when he talked about it. So Ryan is resourceful. We know that he has not used his social security number nor his passport in over 5 years. Our relationship was good. It was strong, and he had said that I was the only person that stood by him. So Bodie, I know Myers told you that. You're the only person that stood by her. Our stories are, there's some parallel to the adversity. So as I was listening to, again, episode 3 on the first season, I want people to go back and listen to that. But when we're going through tough things with our kids, when we can let them know that we love them, that no matter what, unconditionally, and we don't have to agree with with what they do or their behavior, but we love them to the core and we let them know that, they will come back around and say, you stuck by me, you were there. And it's okay. So I hope Ryan comes home or contacts me. As a mom, I just want to know. But there's hope. There is hope.
There's hope, and
There's hope.
And I'm sure he's definitely, especially when he hears all the amazing things you're doing with your life right now, he's going to be even more proud of his mother. And what you've done since the adversity that has been put in front of you is remarkable. And you actually, next thing I want to talk about is you got remarried. So tell us about what your husband has meant to you at this point in your journey.
Oh, so my friends convinced me to go on Match.com. It works, people. And Sean Lang is my new groom. I used to say current husband, but it sounds so temporary, and I'm not doing it again. So we'll be married 30 years, and he's still my new groom. Sean and I met on Match.com. He reached out. He said that he got outside his comfort zone because, come on. When you go on one of those sites, I had just had a photo shoot done. You put the best pictures up and things like that. And he looked at my picture and he said, she's way out of my league. But I'm going to, his first email to me through Match.com was, I really like your hair. I like my hair too. I'm proud of my hair. I've earned every single one of these silver streaks.
I like it too.
And I like your hair too, buddy.
Thank you. It's the Michael Jordan.
Yes. And so we just communicated, and I am going to be, but Bodhi and Batista, I know that people have opened up to you that typically don't open up on some things. You all are very genuine. And Sean was an 04 in the Navy Reserve. He was working 2 other part-time jobs. So he was a traditional reservist and working at the other. He was up to his eyeballs in debt, never been married. So here he was, 40 years old, never been married. My mom worried, oh my gosh, what's wrong with him? He did have a lot of toys. He had 4 cars, things like that. But he had been a bachelor all this time. And, Don was 3 days from putting on colonel. My dad was promoted to brigadier, turned it down because of my stroke. And it wasn't the rank as much as it was the sphere of influence. I love helping people. I've always been a people pleaser. And the sphere of influence that my dad and Don had around them, being a wing commander, my dad was a wing commander, Don being a squadron commander and all, there were more people that I could help. So it wasn't necessarily about the rank structure, it was the sphere of influence. And so Sean and I, it took like 12 weeks before I actually gave him my telephone number. And the first time he called me, he left a message and said, hi, Christy, this is Sean. I just wanted to say hi and all that. And then the next message I got was, oh my gosh, if you don't call me back because I used the wrong name, I hold nothing against you. And it's like, you are not the first and you won't be the last. It's okay. But I went to dinner with 3 friends of mine, and I had just gotten my job as a receptionist, making $23,000 a year. And remember, I had been a stay-at-home mom. I had a degree, but I hadn't used it. And I went to dinner with these 3 friends of mine who were all in the Air Force Reserve. They had all worked with Don. And I got there late and they were laughing. And I said, hey guys, what did I miss? And they said, well, you just got your job as a receptionist and we're taking bets on how long before you're the CEO. I'm like, right, sure, uh-huh. And they say, oh no, Kristen, we're serious. We're absolutely serious. And I said, but wait a minute, I feel like I need to be with a C-level, a CEO or a CFO or a senior leader in the military to have that sphere of influence. That's not, it's not me. I'm riding coattails, right? And I told them about Sean. I said, I like Sean, but he's an E4 in the Navy Reserve. And they said, Kristen, why can't you be the CEO? Why can't you be the senior leader? Why can't you be the DV? And it was an aha moment. I will tell you, of these three women, one retired as a colonel in the Air Force Reserve, one retired as a major general in the Air Force Reserve, and the other one is still a major general in the Air Force Reserve. These are strong women leaders, female leaders, and they saw in me something that I did not see in myself. Now, I'm really good at seeing other things and other people, potential in other people, to help them get over their fears and their obstacles and, the things between the two fingers. But it's hard for us to self-reflect and see that in ourselves, and they saw that in me. And so I had a talk with Sean. We sat and talked because we knew that our relationship was getting stronger. And I said, how would you feel if I kind of stepped outside my comfort zone to have my own sphere of influence? And he's like, look, I'm a type B to your type AAA plus plus plus. I'm okay being in the background. In fact, I will be your whoa Nelly. You can come to me with your big ideas and I will celebrate those big ideas for you and then bring in reality for you and go, okay, how are you going to achieve these goals? And he has. Sean absolutely has been my number one cheerleader, my number one supporter, and we communicate all the time about, he's my plus one. So because of that dinner I had with those women, I was a receptionist, single mom with two boys, going through a tough time. I found a women's group to join with very strong, supportive female entrepreneurs. Our first female mayor of Colorado Springs had started this group. I got out there more. I became the best receptionist anyone has ever seen. I went above and beyond. After a year, they pulled me into proposals. I became a proposal manager. I'm working with all these subcontracting companies. I'm working on $500 million contracts for the company. I missed the military, so I joined the Air Force Association, which I had been a member of in college, and I joined it. The chapter here in Colorado Springs is the third largest chapter in all of Air Force Association. And I got involved in that because they were speaking my language. And then I became the president as a military spouse of the third largest chapter. And then because of that, I became the first woman and military spouse to be chair of the Military Affairs Council in Colorado Springs. 78-year organization. And I come in, the first time I was invited to a change of command, and my name, it said Miss Christy, DV, 06 and above on the chair. I took a picture of that and I sent it to my 3 girlfriends. And I said, you guys were right. So I kind of got outside that comfort zone and wanted to make a difference and bring a little bit different flavor as a military spouse in. And Sean has been okay being my plus one doing that. In fact, so his squadron was putting me in for an award and it didn't get submitted. And so he was looking online one night and he found this Military Spouse of the Year award, and it just happened to be in the nominating period. So he nominated me for it because he was feeling bad. And then I received this email that says you've been nominated. I've never ever heard of the organization, of the award or anything like that. And it's funny. I told you I don't take no for an answer. As I accepted the nomination, I had to fill out an application. And Sean was right there going, you can do it. This is great. You forgot to put this down in the application and all. And I looked at the terms of service for the year before, and it said, 1, you had to be over 18 years old. Check. 2, you couldn't be active duty yourself. 3, if your military member was a reservist or National Guard, they had to be on Title 10 orders for 180 consecutive days. So they had to be a full-time reservist for 6 months. Sean was not. Sean was a traditional reservist. The 1 week in a month, 15 days out of the year for his annual tour. And I said, I don't meet these qualifications. And this was from the year before. And I said, you know what? I'm going to fill this out anyway. I'm going to take the opportunity, because one of the questions on the application was, what is a challenge you find as a military spouse? Well, a challenge I found was the whole reserve moniker. Just a reservist. Sean was a traditional reservist. Okay, the 1 week in a month, 15 days out of the year for annual tour. I was key spouse for his squadron. I was not key spouse 1 week in a month, 15 days out of the year. I was key spouse. I was the key spouse 365. And as a reservist, Sean had to be as trained, as certified, as mission ready as his active duty counterpart. So my answer to the what is the challenge you find as a military spouse is just a reserve moniker, just a reservist moniker. Little did I know at the time that the organization was looking at changing the terms of service to remove that third stipulation of the full-time orders for 180 days. I didn't know that, but something inside of me said, you know what? I need to fill this out. I need to do it. And I became the first reserve spouse to be named Air Force Spouse of the Year. And it opened up doors for me. Now, I was on that path. I was on the path to open some doors. It would have taken me a heck of a lot longer. It has been my springboard. Because I was involved with the Air Force Association and still am, I'm a life member, still very involved in my chapter, involved in the national. They had invited me to speak at the AFA conference in 2018. And that opened a lot of doors for me to start speaking, to be invited to come talk about the aftermath, about the hope we have as a community, about showing up, even if it's not within your comfort zone. And that's when I knew my soul was on fire, when I knew I was doing what I was supposed to do. That it took me 10 years from the time of Dawn's death to the time where I started talking about it. I was embarrassed. I felt guilty. Now I understand that guilt is more regret. Guilt is when you do something you know you weren't supposed to do, but regret is doing something that you thought was right at the time. I have learned to forgive myself for doing things that I did during survival mode. I think we all have to do that. We can't live in the past. I talk about the past, but I look forward to the future because I want other people to look forward to the future. We've all experienced that 10 out of 10 on the pain scale, and so Sean has been such a support. I don't know many spouses who can live in the shadow of a previous life, but when you were talking about Alan, for your family, Bodie, I thought of Sean. Sean did not come in to replace the boy's dad. He was there as a support for them. And when Ryan would get upset with Sean or something, we had to go back to what do the two of them have in common? They both loved me. You and Alan loved your mom. That was the commonality, those times where you had the tensions, right? How could your mom find someone after your dad, but she can't live in the past either. And it's her attitude. I love your face lights up when you talk about your mom. But it's our attitude. Secretary Mattis, when he was here at the Air Force Academy for graduation, during his speech, he said, our attitude is our greatest weapon system. It is, right? We've been around people who have been Eeyores, and it kind of brings us down. It's so much easier to bring someone down than to lift someone up. I joke that when I was Cool Mom, I was Rogue from X-Men. Look at the hair, right? Rogue from X-Men. When I'm not so cool mom, I'm Cruella DeVille from 101 Dalmatians. But Rogue in X-Men, she would touch someone and suck the life right out of them. I want to be the opposite of Rogue. I want to walk into a room, or I want to touch someone, and I want to breathe life into them. I want to show them the possibilities that they have. Life is not always fun, and we don't know what battle people are waging in their life at any moment. When we can, as a leader or supervisor, when you have to say no to someone, help them understand, just take that extra time to help them understand its next opportunity. It's their next opportunity. This may not be the path. I'm going to be your guide on the detour. Let's find new avenues for your talent. Because we all have talent. We're all unique. We all bring something different to the table. And when we can help people navigate to find, instead of a job, their joy. Because it's easy. It's like swimming downstream. Go with the flow, right?
So you're doing some amazing things right now, and I'm sure we would have to almost turn this into like a 3-part to go over all of the things that you were doing. But tell the listeners about just some of the things like March 4th, National Survivors Day, Veterans Village, and some projects that you are looking into doing.
Yeah. Thinking back to 2020, right? And going back through COVID can't be the whole thing. If we go back and review just this year, I got a chance to go to Thule, Greenland, our northernmost military base. It was the last trip before everything was put on hold. That was a highlight. I went to the State of the Union. Again, I'd been working with our Senator Cory Gardner here in Colorado on the 988. It's a 3-digit national suicide hotline number. So we've been working on it for 2 years. When we're in the throes and we need to call the national suicide hotline, whether for ourselves or for someone within our sphere of influence, a family member or someone we care about, who wants to think of 10 numbers or look it up? 988 has been signed as an executive order passed by the House and the Senate. It will be active in June of 2022. So working on that, working with Senator Gardner, I said, hey, if you by chance have an extra ticket for the State of the Union, if you don't ask, the answer is always no, right? If you ask, you have a chance. I had a chance. He said, yes, come with me. I was sitting there left of the president's box for the State of the Union. It was fabulous. But working on the 988 and getting that passed was absolutely amazing. I have been working for 8 years. I keep getting no, I get the Heisman, the stiff arm, but it just means next opportunity. But it means so much to me. So it was the National Survivors Day. We have over 1,500 national days: National Cookie Day, National Ice Cream Day, National I Love Lucy Day. All of these days that we celebrate something. We don't have a National Survivors Day, and I'm not talking about just cancer or just one adversity, right? We all go through different. We are survivors every single day. So we've changed the name. It's National Resilience Day, and it's March 4th, because no matter what the obstacle, we put one foot in front of the other and we march forth and conquer. We conquer our fears and our disappointments and those detours that we have to take in our life. So the city of Colorado Springs, the county that we live in, El Paso County, and the state of Colorado have already proclaimed March 4th in the past as Survivors Day or Resilience Day, perseverance in the face of adversity. So this last year in 2020, going to the State of the Union, that was the beginning of opening the door to walk into the executive or into the Oval Office to have it signed as an executive order. And COVID, that's all I need to say. COVID, right? But if we needed a National Resilience Day more than any day or any year, I would say it would be this year. So I have a friend who is a friend of Biden's and worked on his campaign. And guess what? If you don't ask, the answer is no. I asked, and we are in the works to getting it signed as an executive order this year. It will be in the national calendar day because those days are not necessarily an executive order or a joint resolution through the House and Senate. But it's going to happen. I'm trademarking. I'm really working hard on all of that. And then I am working on virtual reality suicide prevention training for the Air Force, and working with Coach Tony Dungy from the Indianapolis Colts, the former coach of the Colts. And I'm sitting in his virtual chair. So we're doing an airman to airman, a first sergeant to airman, a senior leader to airman, and then a spouse to airman on suicide prevention. I think, the toughest part of asking the question, are you thinking about hurting yourself? Are you thinking about taking your life? Is the answer. We're afraid. What do we do when we hear the answer yes? But when we can provide resources ahead of time, when we're all in a good place, when we can provide those resources, when we can help people, they know that they can call somebody, a resource to say, hey, I'm not leaving this person, but it's the spouses that see the signs when we are open to it. Sometimes when you're so close to something, you need fresh eyes. And so that's when coworkers and neighbors can see a little more clearly than we do with our own families. But a lot of the time the spouses are there. So we're doing virtual reality. We're hoping that will just grow. I'm doing suicide prevention training with the YMCA. I'm doing some coaching with individuals just to be that emotional support human for them. And then I co-founded a nonprofit with two friends. One was an RAF fighter pilot and helicopter pilot who severed his spine in a flight accident 30 years ago. And the other one is a retired from the Air Force. But Stuart, the paraplegic, was an engineer by trade. So this is next opportunity, find new avenues for your talent. He lost his identity as a helicopter pilot and as a fighter pilot. And with his engineering background, he has developed the only exoskeleton apparatus device approved by the FAA to put paraplegics back in the cockpit of a helicopter. That's huge. Our veteran population, we talk about the suicide crisis in the veteran community. It's no longer 22 a day, it's 27 and a half a day. The latest report that came out, 27 and a half a day are taking their lives. The aftermath of that, the community aftermath, the family aftermath of that, but they're missing a sense of community and a sense of purpose. And if we can help them find their purpose, what sets their soul on fire, their joy instead of a job, the whole community benefits from that. So with our village that we want to build in Colorado Springs, so we need $3.2 million to buy this land. We've got $10,000 in the bank. I'm competitive. We're going to do it somehow. We want to have flight training. We want to have welding. We want to have vocational. We want to have homes. There's an overgrown golf course that we want to revitalize, have horticulture for the veterans, have trout fishing, have an all access playground, because it's not just about the veterans, it's about their family members as well, and coming alongside of them. I did a military spouse resiliency workshop in Colorado Springs because I wasn't traveling, and we had over 5 military spouses take their lives here in Colorado Springs this year. So it's not as we were talking about the podcast, that you had this desire to do the podcast. You weren't sure how to do it, and everything wasn't perfect and all, but it's progress. You not only had a call to action, but you did the action, and that's what it's about. Sometimes we don't need a call to action, it's just action, and we do it. And it can be messy. We have lessons that we learn from it. We get better each time. That mess brings other people alongside to do it with us, and it just grows and grows and gets better.
Awesome. It's so good to hear that you're involved with so many things and sparking so many avenues for people out there. So my last question to you, or for this podcast, and we definitely got to continue on with future podcasts, is what do you want to be known for 50 years from now?
I want to be known for living my life. It's so funny that you asked this question. Not funny. It's just, it's amazing how it all falls in. So I have told my family that on my tombstone, I want my birth date and my death date with an exclamation point in between. Can you imagine walking through a cemetery and seeing this tombstone with an exclamation point where typically there's a dashed line, right? In fact, yesterday, this is one of my Christmas gifts. An artist did this for me. An exclamation point. What does an exclamation point on a headstone tell you? Probably that she was kind of fun. She lived her life.
It's in your email.
Right? Yes, it is. The eyes in my name. My new logo has an exclamation point. I'm known as the human exclamation point to my friends. I want people to know that I lived my life and they can too. But more importantly, together. We do it together. Don't do it alone. Even your podcast, see, you guys do it together. It's not as much fun alone, is it?
I've done them alone before, and it's not the same. And I wouldn't really admit that to him unless you were here, but yeah.
It's being recorded, Bodie.
I know. I'll edit this piece out. But no, we definitely, ma'am. Gosh, I can't thank you enough from the bottom of my heart for opening up, for taking time to not just be a guest, but for allowing me to connect with you over the past couple of weeks. And this has just been truly remarkable. I think that this is definitely going to touch a lot of people. And I think that what you're doing out there, especially when COVID, the traveling restrictions and stuff get lifted and you can get back out there to all these bases and start talking to people. I mean, even if I encourage everyone out there just to Google her name and look her up and read some of these stories, and because there's plenty of them, and read about some of the people that have come up to her. And I think there was one where I read about someone who had came up to you afterwards and they had a note already written and they went to seek help, mental health, or whichever agency. It's remarkable, the work that you're doing with people. And that just shows it has a purpose. And you're doing some amazing things. And I know that everybody in your family, everyone whose lives you touched before, all the way up till now, be super proud of the things you're doing. And I'm grateful that I have this connection. So, Batista, what final comments you have for her?
Yeah, I'm glad that we got to figure everything out and then reschedule, and then all three of us got to be here at the same time. It was very important for me to be here. Like I said, I lost 4 friends to suicide. So, I mean, it's kind of funny because we do this podcast. We spend hours prepping each podcast, each show, and it felt like you had the outline right in front of you. So I don't know how you knew what was coming up or whatnot, and how you filled in the blanks for some of our questions, but you did it. And some of the things, that I want to talk about is the pain scale, 10 out of 10, right? Such a important thing to understand is, when you go up to someone and you go, what is your pain 10 out of 10? When I'm firefighting, some people will be like, it's a 10, right? And I'm like, okay, well, a 10 means like you just lost your hand, like, does it feel like that? And then they go, okay, maybe it's a 5, right? But when it comes to stories like this and stuff, a 10 out of 10 can mean something different for someone. It could be their worst day. And then sure, you can hear another story and that's their 10 out of 10, but the 10 out of 10 for them right now is this in their current time in their life. So it's so important, like you were saying, just to talk to people, to share your story, and then express your 10 out of 10 to other people so they can help you through whatever you're going through in life, And one thing you mentioned Rogue. I was definitely going to say exactly what you said, right? I was looking up her superpower while you were podcasting with us and sharing your story. And I was like, oh, that's definitely not her superpower. But I was like, but what her superpower definitely is connecting with people, bringing up, making their life or having them tap into being positive and then restoring each individual and making them the best individual that they can be. So I really appreciate you for that. Your military language, your lingo, you talk through acronyms. You definitely understand the military language. You said 15 years now, or it sounds like more involvement with the military, and your dad was in the military as well. But another thing is, conquering fears. You mentioned that in the beginning, and a big fear that people are going through or don't want to talk about or don't know how to talk about is suicide. And the fact that you're out there quarterbacking this, taking it head on, this fear is amazing. So, and then hearing your stories of the aftermath, and for you sharing your stories from the family's perspective, from your friend's perspective, is so important for people, because when people make that decision, ultimately it hurts people for the long run. I know there's times where people will message me and then I'll be like, I'll call you back because I know I have to give this person a certain amount of time because of what happened to this individual that was a friend of ours, and then we'll talk over the phone and then just talk about how great that person was, and wish we were there for them. So, and that's years later. So, and it's made friendships that I have with people even stronger. But yeah, just want to thank you for your time.
Well, thank you both. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing both of you in person.
Yeah.
Sometime soon. And I would like to challenge the two of you to reach out to someone that you haven't contacted in a while, especially on this new year. Just kind of throw a dart at your contact list, if you will, and contact someone that you haven't contacted in a while, and just text them and say, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
Start a conversation with them. So Bodhi, I I want to ask this question. I hope you don't mind. And if it's,
No,
you
absolutely.
know, as you told me, you can say pass. I'm not completely clear on your sister's story.
Mm-hmm.
um, that that August in 1998. But I know that her boyfriend at the time passed as well that day.
Yeah. Yeah. She, we, her and I and her boyfriend and the girl that I was dating at the time, we were living in Lumberton. It was about 20 minutes away from Red Springs where my father was buried, and my grandfather was living there as well. And we were moving the next day, and my sister had grown very close to my grandfather. Growing up, he was a lot closer to myself than he was to her, at least in her eyes, because I watched North Carolina basketball, and it was that guy connection. And but the later years there, especially after my father's death, they grew really close. And so she wanted to go see him and go to the cemetery. So we rode 2 separate cars down there and spent the day in Red Springs. It's a little tiny city in North Carolina. And we drove around, and they kind of drove off a little bit before us. And I remember telling her bye and kind of waving to her. And I didn't think it was like a goodbye, but she got home that afternoon, and we were kind of off doing our separate things. And she kind of got into a little spat with my oldest sister and my mother. And I was kind of that voice that she came to kind of reassure her, like, things are going to be okay. We're just arguing. And I remember she called me from my girlfriend's house, and she was like, hey, I'm going to be home in a little bit. I just want to let you know. And we just kind of talked. I remember we were hanging up the phone, and she said, I love you. And which was kind of weird for us, because I was like, gross, you're my sister. We're 18 months apart. You don't tell me you love me. But we had learned to do that a little bit more there near the end. And I told her I loved her back. We hung up the phone, and that was the last time we talked. And I remember when the cops came, and pretty much what they said was they had found the 2 of them. They had driven out towards Ocean Isle Beach, which is the beach that we grew up at as kids. But they went to pulled off on a logging trail, and they found his Jeep out by the road. And they went out there, and they found her. She had been listening to music, and she had been shot right behind her ear. And then he had turned a gun on himself, and he was still breathing a little bit when the cops came there, but she'd already passed away. So really, they're the only 2 that really know what happened there. But my mom and I, we kind of have our ideas. There was no notes. There was no, talking to me about any of this, no talking to my mother. But it was really hard. It was really hard to accept that something like that had happened. And then just kind of that uncertainty, like living your days and not exactly knowing for sure. Because, some days I'm like, did he pull the trigger? Did she pull the trigger? Like, what exactly happened? And but I just know that, she did some remarkable things in the short time that she was here. And I am sitting here today doing this because of her. So I heard something the other day, and I think it rings true to, especially Don and Ryan. And I mean, even Ben and my mom and none of us are gone when people are still talking about you. You're still living on. And Myers passed away August 23rd, 1998. But here at the time of recording, December 31st, 2020, she's still living. She's still here. She's still, I look at Becton.
And your daughter.
I look, oh my gosh. Daughter. I look at Becton, and she is Myers. She acts like her. She looks like her. She is witty. She is cynical. She is funny. She drives me crazy. She does everything that Myers did. And I do the exact same thing to her. But every time I look at her, I it's hard to explain for someone who doesn't know the feeling, but I look at her, I see her, she says something, and it's like, for a minute there, it's my sister. It is her. And they're even built the same. Like their bodies are exactly the same. So it's it's something I felt like I was a victim for the longest time, but now looking at it, and I know it always sounds crazy, but I'm lucky that I had her and had the time with her. And that's my story. Thank you for asking that, though. It's good to talk about it.
So I asked that because as I listened to the podcast, and then I tried to do some research, and all I saw was the headline mystery behind youth death.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it was a murder-suicide situation, as you had just talked about, or if because they were on the logging trail, maybe someone came up behind them when the two of them, he was getting ready to move and all that. So I've been thinking about this today and debating whether I was going to encourage you to do this or not. Yeah. And I've decided I'm going to do it, and whether you want to do it or not. But so her boyfriend's family lost someone, and if it was him, they have, I'm sure, guilt that they're living with and all that. Do you keep in touch with them at all?
His mother was the one that we knew, and as far as I know, to this day, I know my mom has contacted her a couple of times. I have no idea where that stands today. I haven't talked to his family since 1998. I haven't spoke to them since then. But I have no idea with my mom. I'll see her this weekend. I'm sure that's something I'll bring up and ask her. But
I think of my in-laws and how they treated me afterwards, and blame me and I was so worried about doing things that they would come after me in public and all that, and I had to get over that fear. I can't control them.
Yeah.
But I did reach out to my mother-in-law a couple days ago and got outside my comfort zone. She's still angry with me, but I reached out. We both lost someone
exactly
that we loved, and we stand with each other in that grief. And so I just was wondering if you felt like you could reach out to his family and just if that would be appropriate or not. But I thought I would bring that up. It's been an awfully long time.
And it's weird too, because I don't hold any ill will towards him. He was great when I was around him. I know at the site there was drugs, there was some alcohol and stuff that were involved. I don't think anyone is in the right mind at that time. And I mean, it's hard to explain. I'm seeing it right now with teenage girls, but the thing that always scares me about teenagers is relationships, because someone can break up with you and it is the end of the world. That is your world, is that relationship. But as an adult, we can see that and say that's a big learning experience. You will be fine. It is going to hurt.
There's someone better out there. No one is.
But they don't see it. 8 billion people, but that is their one. And I know he was struggling with her leaving and going to South Carolina, even though it was like an hour and a half away. But at that time and that age, that is, you might as well be in California and Maine from each other. And I know they were struggling with that, but she was excited. She was excited to get out and meet new people and see new things. And I think that's something that I've kind of hung on to where I'm like, I really just, I don't know. I don't know what happened, but yeah, it's something that I still, August 23rd, every single day. It's hard. It's really, really hard. But my wife's my support system. She knows, and she knows that day rolls around and she's not going to bug me. But if I need to go talk to her, then I have someone there to speak to. So Yeah, but
And your life is better for the 14 years that you have. with
exactly.
her,
Exactly.
right?
Wouldn't give
And
I wouldn't trade it for anything else. All the memories with her. If I could hang on to those memories or collect new ones, I would still hang on to hers every single day.
and I have a feeling because of my stroke and then Don's suicide and then Ryan missing, the lessons that I learned during the stroke and recovering from that, I built upon those
Mm-hmm.
with Don's suicide and then with Ryan. And guess what? Something else is going to happen in life, and I'm ready for it.
Yeah.
And I'll build on those. But the lessons that you learned when your dad passed, you built on those when Myers passed.
Mm-hmm.
And we build on that. And then Batista being a firefighter, I mean, you've mentioned you've seen some things, you've had 4 people. We build on our life's lessons. And sometimes we forget about them, but when we need them the most, we've got them readily available for us.
Yeah.
So it's okay to remember the past. Don't live in it though, right?
Exactly.
Look forward. March forth and conquer.
What is it you call it? Feed forward for feedback. Same thing with this. Yes. It's keep moving forward. Well, ma'am, thank you so much. We appreciate this time. I cannot wait to see the response that we have from everyone on this episode. That is all the time we're going to have for here today. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Shadows Podcast.